Good evening, ladies and germs. Out in the Reichle garage, doing diligent work today on two Fender Rhodes pianos. I will make a correction in my commentary about Fender Rhodes pianos. In actuality, the two Rhodes pianos that I own are not Fender Rhodes. They're actually just Rhodes. So whenever the company Fender Rhodes, Fender was involved with that, they sold the vested interest and got out of the party. So these Rhodes that I own from circa 1981 are actually just called Rhodes pianos, which is fine with me. It's of no consequence. My only consequence was to resurrect these two particular pianos, being from 81, 91, 91, 2001, 32 years ago. So obviously both of these pianos needed work. This 73 key piano here, whenever I pulled it out of storage, had at least 15 bad pickups, so 15 notes on the keyboard that wouldn't sound. And this particular 54 key Rhodes piano at one time did function and all the notes played, but when I pulled it out the last time, it produced no sound at all. So between the two of these, I started the resurrection on the 73 first as my priority, seeing as the 73 key is what I received for my graduation gift from Terry Sanford High School back in 1981 from my father, who was the band director at that time. And that Mark II Rhodes 1981 73 key stage piano at that particular time still wholesale cost $800. And today in 2013, as far as I understand it, the new Rhodes, which is a Mark 6, 7, 8, 9, I don't know what it is, retails for approximately $5,000. So needless to say, the inspiration here was to refurbish both of these keyboards and make them playable again at a professional level, to circumvent the necessity of having to buy a new that would cost you $5,000. So we found a process here so we could bypass the middleman and have a nice playable professional sounding instrument, hopefully two. The subject of this particular video today was the wiring inside each one of these pianos, and the biggest thing I wanted to show you was the modification that I made to each one of these instruments, basically eliminating the RCA jack inside the piano that connects the volume and tone pots and quarter-inch jack to the harp. Rhodes saw fit for some reason to include a RCA jack mounted to the harp so that you can unplug the harp and actually lift it out of the piano. And oftentimes we found out over the years that this particular little RCA jack fails and was not of high quality, and so there was speculation as to why they used an RCA jack to begin with. I will have to disagree with that, in that I found in my audio trials and tribulations that the RCA jack, in my opinion, has often been cleaner and quieter than a regular quarter-inch jack. So it never bothered me that there was an RCA jack on the inside of the piano, but in this particular situation, the RCA jack did fail on the 73 key piano. So that was a source of failure. And not sure that the RCA jack failed on the 54, but the quarter-inch jack did fail. So when troubleshooting this particular small keyboard, it turns out that all of these pickups here were good, and the instrument did play, but what failed most probably was the RCA jack that used to go here and was held down by this a screw in that hole onto the contact sheet, and also on this particular piano the RCA jack, the quarter-inch jack failed. Now had I tried that first, taken the RCA jack out, replaced the 1/4" jack, I would have found that the piano played. But I wasn't smart enough to do that. So instead what I did was thought that it might be one of these two sliders, the volume slider and the tone slider. So I took those out first, and without making a diagram of the wiring, I snipped those out. And the tone control never did anything anyway. That was one common problem with the 54 key Rhodes, was the absence of a regular tone pot, which are pots like these. This particular 73 has a Rhodes preamp, so you have a volume pot and you have a concentric tone control with bass boost and treble boost, which augments the performance of this instrument, but also demands that, because that's an active preamp, needs a 9-volt battery, which basically that carriage is built into the circuit board of the Rhodes preamp. So you have to be careful that you always have a fresh 9-volt battery, and it uses a very specific kind of replacement RC 1/4" jack that has a switch, so that when you unplug this plug, it disconnects the battery and it doesn't drain your battery while the instrument is sitting. So that's a good thing. So I opted to leave the preamp in there, and the jack was good, so all of that I left the way that it is. But what I did on the 73 is the same thing I did on the 54. Because the RCA jack was problematic, I opted to remove it. So on this particular keyboard, the RCA jack would normally go here, and the wire from the harp, which is basically your wire that comes off your last pickup, the positive, your instrument level, and then the ground, which is this black wire that grounds on this strip. That's all the grounds of the pickups are grounded, and then this wire, as you can see, goes all the way back down to the end of the pickup rail, and also is this strip that grounds these together. So this is your ground wire, and also jumps across and grounds to the strip that's underneath the tone bars and the tines. So the black wire is your ground, and also on this side of the pickup rail, your wire off of the pickups also goes to ground. So when you come back over on this side, I got rid of the RCA jack, and I rigged my own little stirrup here using the pre-existing hole where the RCA jack was. I used a cable clamp that was pre-existing on the wire that comes off of the 1/4" jack, which is this big gray thick wire here, which is very heavy copper shielded wire. It's a very high quality cable, and then your a very well insulated instrument level sound coming out of the middle of that grounded wire. So that the positive, or your instrument level, of this cable goes straight to the terminal on your last pickup. So I straight wired that, took the RCA jack out, and used that screw to clamp this wire down so it'll be stationary, it won't be moving around subject to breakage. And I also grounded it with the original mounting bracket for the RCA jack, which is underneath this plastic. The plastic holds the wire in place. Underneath that is the original piece of metal for the RCA jack that grounded the RCA jack. So I have this grounded to the foil through the screw like it was originally, and also the ground goes straight to the cable, eliminating the RCA jack, and the positive wire comes off my first pickup, goes here, and also goes straight into the cable. So there's no more RCA jack. That's great. It gets rid of that weakness. There's no possibility that it'll fail. And then that big heavy wire comes straight down and goes straight onto my circuit board with the Rhodes preamp and right to my 1/4" jack. So that basically eliminates any possibility of failure of that RCA jack, any noise, and also, as most people understand and know, that the sound of the Rhodes being recorded or played directly off of the harp, circumnavigating the 1/4" jack completely, but just plugging an RCA cable into that jack and going straight into the board is always the best sound. So now I have modified this piano to get rid of that jack so that I'm going to have the best sound possible coming into the Rhodes, and I'm going to play a little bit of it here, And the cool thing is what I've been using for monitors is these NS10 studio monitors. So these I bought because every mid-size studio almost in the world has these Yamaha NS10. These are M's, NS10M. It's an 8-inch cone and a tweeter, and they're extremely accurate speakers. And I've had them for a long time, and I've never used them very much. I end up, when I mix projects and stuff, I mix them using a pair of Sennheiser headphones because I'm familiar with that sound, and there's too much ambient noise to use these as a good reference. So I usually end up mixing my projects with the same pair of lightweight foam Sennheiser headphones, but those are dead, those are gone. So I decided to use these as my most accurate source to tune and voice these Rhodes pianos, which ended up being a very good choice. And what I do is that I run it through a simple Mackie 1202 VLZ, right, which is a very common mixer. I have two other ones of these. So one piano goes into one channel and one piano goes into the other channel. I have the EQ. Well, it used to be flat. I don't know why I had the bass turned down. Anyway, but what makes it a clean monitoring system is this is a PV Decca digital power amp. So the lines come straight out of the Mackie mixer using low impedance jacks. The XLRs, not 1/4 inch jacks. XLRs, which is a quieter signal, and they come down here, and I had to find the appropriate cables to go into the back of the PV Decca amp because these are stereo balanced level input. So instead of having XLR jacks like this, the way most power amps would have, they decided to go with these TSR 1/4 inch jack. So it's a tip ring sleeve stereo plug that's wired to an XLR, which is also 3 conductor. 2 of them are signal that are 180 degrees out of phase. One of them is a shield. So with the correct cables, I get a very clean signal coming out of the Mackie down into this power amp. And I have heavy duty speaker cables that run over to my NS10s. Listen to the helicopter. Anyway, my battery's going to run out pretty soon, but I wanted to give you a little demonstration of how good the piano sounds, and also show you that I did exactly the same modification on the 54. Here's where the RCA jack normally would have gone. I straight wired that. The wire comes right off of your last pickup and goes straight into my heavy-duty shielded wire, eliminating that jack completely. And this one goes straight down, and instead of these sliders that were really cumbersome and the tone never worked, I put an original 10K audio taper Rhodes original volume pot in the 54. I customized this, took the sliders out. I replaced this jack with another custom Rhodes. It was used, but it was in good shape. And now I have, like the regular 73, which is what we're all used to, instead of having to do some crazy stuff like this, I have a regular volume control. So it's made basically both of these pianos very stable, very solid acoustically, and they sound really good. I only have 3 more notes to put on here up at the top of this piano, and it fairly will pretty much be complete. It's been tuned and voiced. And the same thing with the 73, it's been tuned, pretty much voiced all the way up. So I'm going to set the camera down. I'm going to play both of the keyboards through these Yamaha NS10s to give you an idea of how nice these pianos sound and if you can hear a difference between the two of them. So we'll see what's going on, right? This piano has a beautiful sound. I'm really getting used to the NS10s, an 8-inch speaker and a tweeter. doing it now like I was earlier. That's the 73, and then on this rank, quite a difference. So it's obvious that the 54 key is darker, but to me is a cleaner. The fundamental is cleaner in some way. Maybe it's not as even and sheening and shining as the 73, which is really beautiful to play evenly, but the 54 has more somehow definition for each pitch, which is really, I like a lot. Obviously there is more upper end in this. I got some Lexicon reverb. Which is very nice. And I got my low E fixed today, so my lowest E pickup was bad. So the impetus to do this was, if I'm going to replace that low E pickup, which is the lowest on the keyboard, which is where your lead comes off of to go to your 1/4 inch jack, I might as well go ahead and do the modification and get rid of the RCA jack. You got to take two tines off anyway to replace that pickup, and then resolder those jumpers, and then figure out that. The other thing I'm going to show you that I did that was very important was to get stability. You don't want your wires rattling around whenever you carry the instrument. So the thing is here, where the jack used to be here, so now I've got that cable tethered down, and the ground is grounded with that screw to this metal strip, so it's grounded the way it was originally, and the positive lead, which is shielded, comes out like this, comes around and comes down and solders onto the first joint of my pickup. Now the thing is you don't want this cable flapping around all over the place. You want that to be stable, so that little cable clamp is holding that stable in this position here. So that's all pretty much nice and solid. And then what I did was made this mod is I drilled a hole in the frame of the harp. So this hole was not here in the metal. I put a hole there, and then I put a wire tie. And so what that does is hold your cable solid. So I mean, it can kind of move around here. That's all good. When you lift the harp up, this is going to move anyway. But this holds that wire solidly in place, and it comes up here and it's held solidly in place with a screw. So that's very, very good engineering for all of your electronics, is that solder joints are not strong enough on their own to hold wires, and I did exactly the same modification here. I bored a hole in the harp, the side of the harp, the metal. Got a wire tie, and it holds my cable in place. So here I did the cable clamp is here. I didn't really secure that with a screw. I got that with a staple, but that's okay. But it's held securely in place here. And again, the ground comes off and goes, and the positive is this little jumper wire that goes right to your straight first pickup. So this is held pretty securely in place. It's not going to be bouncing around, and so that's a good electrical mechanics to hold that wiring in place, so you're not going to have problems with that in the future. Here the leg is coming off of my camera, so I'm going to try to set this here on the mixer, and I'm going to play a little bit on both of the pianos again. So the 54. I got this low C. So the tine from Music Parts Guru, when this tine broke on my lowest note, the low C, I ordered a tine replacement from him off an eBay auction. Damn, it cost $16 for a tine, which is just a little piece of metal, and $6 for shipping. That was 22 bucks, which is a shitload for one. It's half of this assembly. It's not the tone bar. It's just a piece of metal underneath. I thought that was highway robbery. 22 bucks. But anyhow, in confusion, because this was a 54, the numbering was not, did not go by the numbering that's on the tone bar. So I looked here and I went, gee, I need number 16C, because that's the name of this tone bar. But it turns out 16 and a tine was not the same thing. So he sent me a much shorter tine that didn't fit. It was too small for me to use, so we went through some back and forth before we finally got that straightened out, and finally, sure enough, he sent me the C, and I was able to put that on yesterday, I think. So now I got the low C on the 54, which is very important because low C is the lowest note. It's not, as you can see, on the 73. Goes all the way down to E. I got my E fixed today. But on the 54, now I got my lowest note. Every day is something different. God damn it. Figure out what's going on down here. When you push the damper down. my opinion, both of them sound really nice. One thing that I determined that I probably will do is that I replaced all the hammer tips on the 73 because it had a lot of play and they were pretty worn out. And I determined that the 54 hadn't really had a lot of play, so I was going to leave the hammer tips. But since I've done screws and washers and grommets, and I've taken all the tone bars and tines off and cleaned them, and fixed all the pickups and straight wired that RCA jack and